Agora, a anistia ela teve um papel importante porque ela abriu ao nível internacional de que havia, no meu caso particular, de que havia uma pessoa chamada, meu nome, né, estava preso, que num certo momento era desconhecida o seu destino, não se sabia qual era a sua situação. Então, nesse sentido, foi extremamente positivo. E foi positivo também, no geral, porque na medida que toda vez que havia um membro, a anistia adotava um membro, no caso de presos políticos no Brasil, evidentemente se tornava mais difícil para o próprio governo militar, para a repressão, exercer uma tirania absoluta sobre os presos políticos.
The first urgent action was issued in March 1973 in response to the arrest of Professor Luiz Vacílio Rossi, who was a critic of the Brazilian military government at the time. Amnesty International supporters wrote and sent letters, telegrams, faxes from all over the world, compelling the Brazilian government to allow Professor Rossi's family to visit him in detention and to subsequently release him. Seeing how impactful the technique was, Amnesty International established the Urgent Action Network in December of 1973 as part of the global campaign for the abolition of torture. Marilyn McCabe was the first coordinator of the Urgent Action Network in Canada, and she recalls the early days.
In Canada, volunteers in a tiny office at 10 Trinity Square in Toronto were responsible for coordinating the distribution of urgent actions in the mid-1970s. Genevieve Cowgill and her team would send out piles of urgent actions to regional leadership across Canada, and those leaders would in turn send one or two actions to individual members to respond to. As the number of urgent actions increased, so did the number of volunteers who came to help stuff the envelopes and send messages to human rights violators through the telegram bank. At one time, we had 15 helping to facilitate the work of the network and mobilize urgent action writers across Canada.
50 years on, the UAN has a global membership of more than 500,000 people who are on standby to send appeals on behalf of individuals and communities whose rights are being violated. This includes a dedicated membership of nearly 2,000 people across Canada who send out thousands of appeals to put pressure on government to right human rights wrongs. Here are some members on why the network is important to them.
People know that they have support from around the world. That feels important to make sure people know they're not alone. Even though we can't understand what they're going through, we can support them. Also knowing that other community groups and activists are supporting these people makes me feel connected to larger movements. For example, the movement to free Leonard Peltier in the United States. I've seen other groups that I really admire calling for his release, and so being part of that and sending letters feels pretty cool.
Yes. It just seemed like a really necessary piece of what we do in Amnesty, that sometimes things are happening more quickly than a large organization can gear up to address in our usual way. And it really seemed like a person-to-person kind of commitment was something that I would want other people to be doing if I were in the situation that the prisoners we were writing about were in.
Each month that I do an urgent action, it teaches me something about what's going on in the world that maybe is not covered in the mainstream press, and it gives me an opportunity to write a letter or a petition to a specific government person and their ambassadors in Canada to urge that a particular action be taken by that government.
From its initial focus on the abolition of torture, The Urgent Action Network has expanded to cover other human rights violations, including individuals about to be executed, prisoners suffering from declining health due to lack of medical care or hunger strikes, climate justice, violations of gender and sexual rights, as well as disappeared persons or individuals in communities at risk of evictions. For these UAN members, of all the appeals they've sent out in the past, there are some cases that they just can't forget.
Decades back, a woman in prison in Uruguay, she was a prisoner of conscience, her name was Mirta. We knew that she was being detained in really dreadful circumstances and had already been subject to torture. And when her mother went to the prison one day, prisoners' families had to bring them food and necessities and things like that. They were told that the prison had no idea where she was. They had no record of her. So her family were very worried that this meant that she was maybe dead or was being killed. And so we moved from a slower adopted prisoner style of working on her case to an urgent action. And when her mother went back to the prison, she was able to see her again, and her family really felt that that urgent action had saved her life. And I still think about her, actually.
I remember writing about some of the protesters in Belarus a year or so ago, 2 years ago, who protested the unfair and fraudulent elections in that country, under which President Lukashenko, I think his name is, was reelected. They were jailed. This particular woman, political leader in Belarus, was arrested, detained. She was eventually released after a few months. You know, sometimes it's just the pressure from so many different Amnesty members writing from so many different countries around the world that I think sometimes the government say, you know, this really isn't worth the hassle. And we harass the government officials. That's basically what it comes down to do the right thing. And I think they sometimes just say, this is not worth it. The bad publicity that we're getting.
Do you remember a case of someone on death row in the United States, and I remember receiving the update that there was a stay of execution, and it was really inspiring to see that had happened.
Urgent actions do not always lead to the desired outcome, regardless of how much pressure is put on authorities to do the right thing. However, there is evidence that urgent actions have significantly influenced governments to act in the interest of human rights. Testimonies from families and victims of human rights violations show that urgent actions do make a difference, and that's what keeps these members motivated to keep writing.
I do believe one person can make a difference, and certainly the thousands of people in the Amnesty International Urgent Action Group are making difference. Even if it's one success every 3 months, that's still a success. So I believe in keeping on with what I'm doing, because a success is still a success regardless of the numbers.
I was often struck by messages from human rights defenders in Colombia. They are often under attack. They inspire me. The messages from them frequently claimed and claim that the letters, faxes, emails, and phone calls that Urgent Action participants sent to those responsible for human rights violations gave the activists the oxygen they needed to keep going. Our messages not only put the authorities on alert and on notice that we're watching, but provided the defenders with immense solidarity. To feel you're not alone is a wonderful feeling.
I felt it was absolutely crucial to my own sense of well-being and really to the kind of world that I wanted my children to be growing up in, that people around the world would just come together really quickly because somebody just really needed help, and it was something we could do.
Hi, my name is Tawa Kalita Brima, and I'm the Urgent Action Coordinator for Amnesty International Canada. The Urgent Action Network continues to operate on the simple idea that collective outrage and actions help to protect individuals and communities from human rights violations. And it only takes a few minutes of your time every month to write a letter, send an email, or make a post on social media in support of human rights. So, if you'd like to join, please visit our website and fill out the volunteer registration form. I look forward to welcoming you.